Well, hey folks, Real Honesty with Joe Ritlin. These are 13 more of my favorite wrestling managers. I knew I was going to do another list like this. I didn't know if it was going to be 13. I had to look through a whole lot of the managers list and be like, okay, yeah, I'll put these people on there. I may, of course, do another rendition of least favorite female valets at some point, but the top 10 that I did really were like my least favorite of all of them. Do I really want to do another top 10? We'll see. The whole point is I want to talk more about the positives and more about the good wrestling managers, or the ones that even though they were heels and they got under my skin, they were still damn good at their job. And if you haven't seen any of the previous manager videos that I've done, or at least the least favorite ones, I'll put links at the very end of this, and you guys can click on those, or you guys can pause this and check those videos out, and I'll wait. See, wasn't that great? Wasn't that great? I mean, did you pause the video? Did you not? There's no way you watch it in the 8 seconds I was paused. Anyway, yeah, it's pretty obvious that there are too many wrestling managers that I could list in one video, so hence why I'm doing this. Number 13, The Genius. Lanny Poffo, pre-WWE was a whole lot more outspoken and very good, don't get me wrong. Always had a great way with words, still does. Even though the Genius character annoyed me, it was the idea. It was a heel. He was supposed to. Him managing the Beverly Brothers, boom, Blake the Brothers Beverly, and however he said it, because he was a better poet than, he was a poet, and he didn't even know it. Actually, he did know it. And also, for a time, managing Mr. Perfect, including sparking the feud between Bruce Beefcake and Mr. Perfect, where Bruce Beefcake pinned Mr. Perfect at WrestleMania 6. Good booking there. Nothing against Bruce Beefcake the person. I wouldn't have done that, but hey, whatever. They were about to strap the rocket to him. Fortunately, he did survive that parasailing accident. I do always want to clarify that. There's a fine line to not cross, and there we go. I didn't care for the feud, but hey, Beefcake was super over with the garden shears, the scissors, and all that. And the Genius was pretty good at being the butt of some jokes, while also being a pretty damn good athlete. I mean, he really was, and he was a good mouthpiece for people that either couldn't talk or maybe shouldn't talk on TV. So I got to put him on here. Number 12, Scott D'Amore. Scott D'Amore gets way too little credit for his time in Impact Wrestling, for where he was insufferable. He was fucking insufferable. You just wanted to strangle the guy. But that's the whole point of being a heel. He was great at getting heat. And you could tell he loved what he did. And he was all about getting his guys over. Even though he would yell at Don West and Mike Tenay and stuff like that, and he would cause his guys to get victories over Doobie, using a hockey stick, or pulling his guy's foot onto the rope, either with a hockey stick or just while the referee didn't see it. Doing that kind of stuff, really classic heel manager stuff, is why Scott D'Amore should be remembered, not just as a creative mind behind Impact Wrestling currently, or what he did in Border City Wrestling. Correct me if I'm wrong, people in Canada, but isn't that the name of the promotion that Scott D'Amore at least promotes in, or at least is a co-owner in, or does he own the whole thing? Let me know. But his time in Impact Wrestling as manager of Team Canada really needs to be remembered. It's really damn good. I mean, Scott D'Amore, damn good heel. They did have to disband, I believe, at or very shortly after Slammiversary 2006. He was being written off TV to take a more backstage role and stuff like that, but still, his time, damn good heel. Really did get his guys over. A lot of guys benefited from being in Team Canada. A lot of guys really, really did. Even the later members, I believe that Tyson Dukes, I think. It's D-U-X. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. I remember him being pretty good. A1, I remember him being a bit of a musclehead, and he didn't last very long after that. But like Eric Young, Petey Williams, Robert Roode, Bobby Roode, they were damn good. It's really funny to see how they start out, and then Eric Young and Bobby Roode feuded afterwards. Anyway, now we go to number 11, Ted DiBiase. Ted DiBiase, after having a stint in Japan, I believe, after he left WWE for a few months in late 93, was back commentating in 1994, and I think it was a back or a neck injury, but he retired, and he did start the $1 Million Corporation and managed a whole lot of guys. I think Ted DiBiase was damn good to me, and he was a good worker. Don't get me wrong. His Mid-South stuff may have been better than his WWE stuff, But he was a great seller and he was a great promo. I mean, he might have been a better promo than he was a worker, at least by, like midway through his career. But he was a really good worker and really good heel. But his time managing people, he managed to get Kama Mustafa over, and that's nothing against Charles Wright, who played the gimmick, but that wasn't necessarily a great gimmick. He managed to get the whole Tatanka heel turn over, even though I think it would have been better for Lex Luger to turn heel at that point. But you have you had a really good to great worker, to paint on your perspective, but a great heel and also a great talker who had a lengthy career in wrestling, and he was able to give the rub to some of these younger guys. That was good stuff. And I mean, him managing IRS is pretty cool too. So I enjoyed it, and Ted DiBiase was a great manager. Even for the brief time he had. I mean, his time in WCW, that's better left unsaid. Even though him managing Steiner Brothers was always weird because they were just throwing storylines like crazy out there. Number 10, Teddy Long. Teddy Long's time in WCW was a lot better. Him managing Doom, to me, was a highlight of his career. Managing the Skyscrapers, it was what it was. He managed Sid Vicious, and it was always kind of hilarious to see 6'9" Sid Vicious and short as shit Teddy Long. But Teddy Long was a really good talker. And I mean, still is, I'm sure. I mean, I don't know. I've heard that if anybody tweets compliments to him on Twitter, he actually blocks them, which I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what I heard. I have seen examples of it where I'm like, well, that's a bit odd. But that being said, Teddy Long was damn good in WCW. In WWE, don't get me wrong, he was a referee and a manager more than anything. Of course, he was a general manager of SmackDown. And then became more of a caricature of himself with the tag team match player, one-on-one with The Undertaker. I'm not going to even attempt to try to, copy Teddy Long's accent, because I couldn't. There's no way. I love his time managing Doom. I thought he was a great manager for Doom, for Ron Simmons and Butch Reed. He was great. I mean, they tried to have him get Ice Train over, and that didn't necessarily work. And it wasn't Ice Train was bad. He was just generic. He was very strong, and he certainly could work a little, but that wasn't going to work. And yeah, then Teddy Long, he's managed various other people. They had him manage Rodney Mack and Chris Nowitzki. And then they had to manage Jazz, which I think was a good idea because Jazz couldn't really talk. I mean, she sort of could, but Teddy did the best he could to get them over, or get his people over. People he managed. Let me just say that much right there, because I realized how that sounded right when I said it. But he also managed Mark Henry for a brief time, and then transitioned more into being I don't think he was a referee, but I think he then transitioned to being a general manager, which was a good idea, because he was able to be more of the loving, goofy uncle or something like that, and have fun and everything, and all that. But his time as a manager, I thought, was pretty damn good. Like I said, I always have a soft spot for him managing Doom. And then number 9, Colonel Rob Parker. People may be surprised by this. I just thought the guy was funny. He didn't take a lot of bumps, but he was also older and had beat up his body quite a bit doing Southern wrestling, and I thought he was entertaining. Now, yeah, he did apparently rumored to have shit himself at Fall Brawl 94 when Dusty put him in a figure 4 at the War Games. Gross. But his time managing Harlem Heat and him and Sherry and that kind of stuff, and Sherry beating him up in a match and Dusty just freaking losing it on commentary. I think it was World War III 96, if I'm right. But he's like, she clotheslined him. He's just like having fun with it. But I thought Rob Parker was entertaining. He was a friggin' Colonel Sanders plantation caricature, but he was entertaining. He may have not been the longest tenured manager. He was, of course, in WWE, I believe, as Tennessee Lee, if I remember right. He was not bad. He was not bad. Was he as great as maybe some of the ones that I mentioned before on this list? Maybe not, but I still found the guy entertaining. Now we go to number 8, the Grand Wizard. Outlandish, outspoken, very, very good. I mean, newer fans obviously won't remember him. He was also before my time, at least his main stuff. But he was good. He was good with the turban, the weird sunglasses or visor, and the outlandish coats and the gear. But the way he spoke, in the unique way he spoke, he could get his guys over. He could get himself over. He could get the feuds over. He was what a manager from the 70s should have been. And I mean, I believe he managed into the 80s also. He was damn good. He was really, really good. Really enjoyable. I like the Grand Wizard. Looking at some of his stuff back now. So that's why I wanted to put him on this list. Number 7, Terri Runnels. Terri Runnels gets way too little credit for how good she was as a manager. I mean, I don't know if she's still making independent shots and managing now. I don't know, because I can't pay attention to enough people's careers that much. But her time as Alexandria York and managing the York Foundation, which I think is an underrated stable, despite having Terry Taylor in it. Terry Taylor and all the stuff he likes to do to women. Terry Taylor, you sick freak. Get some help. Seriously, stop being that way. But I liked her as Alexandria York. I liked her managing Goldust. She managed other people also. She was more of a backstage announcer, I think, by 99. Because they had her be part of PMS with Jacqueline, and I believe even Ryan Shamrock was part of that. Whatever. Didn't care for that stable necessarily, but it was what it was. But I like Terry as Alexandria York, and she could talk decent. She could talk pretty well. She got better, of course, as she went along. She was certainly better promo than other ones they featured, like Sable and even Sunny. I mean, because Terry, to me, was better than Sunny. And I'll stand by that. And that's fine. People don't have to agree if they don't want. That's all right. That's part of the fun of the debate of these lists. But I like Terry. I like Terry. And her and Goldust were magic. I mean, obviously not just because they were married at the time, managed, but married at the time. But because the gimmicks fit so well. I didn't care for the cigar smoking because I'm anti-smoking, but that's neither here nor there. And I'm not going to hold that against Terry. That was a really, really good part of her career. Sure, her being a backstage interviewer at that point, I think they could have used her as a manager, might have been better. But hey, she had her time as a manager, and pretty underrated time, and did change the way that some people may have thought about women as far as a manager, especially in WCW, because you got to think about it, they had Medusa, and they had a couple others. Terry as Alexandria York did stand out. Number 6, Dutch Mantell. Guy was crazy. Guy was insane. He was a fun worker. He wasn't a great worker, but he was a fun worker. He was a brawler. But his time as Uncle Zebekiah, or managing Jack Swagger, his time managing Alberto Del Rio, less so. But his time managing Jack Swagger, I thought was really, really good, and a big renaissance for his career. He is a great talker. Dutch Mantell is a great talker. And, okay, the character may have been a little bit, close to home for how some people think in this country. Good job there. Keep being good humanitarians there if you think like Zeb Coulter. But him as Dutch Mantell as Zeb Coulter was really, really good. Zeb Coulter, of course, the best Coulter. Certainly not Ann Coulter, horse-faced idiot that she is. But I like Dutch Mantell, especially for that Zeb Coulter run. His time managing Alberto was certainly odd. I personally think they should have put him back with Swagger, because I don't think Swagger was gone from the company yet, and I don't think it was gone from the company until last year. That would have made more sense. But hey, it was what it was. And managing the Real Americans, managing Swagger and Cesaro, I thought was pretty cool. I liked the Real Americans theme. It was the whole We the People thing got pretty over. It was good stuff. Now we move on to number 5, Mr. Fuji. I will admit that Mr. Fuji's promos are never all that great. Him and Don Morocco doing Fuji Vice and the various parodies that they did were actually pretty goddamn entertaining. But his time as a manager, managing the Powers of Pain, managing Demolition, and that's about it. I know, well, the Orient Express also, but they weren't a team that was really together. I think they were together in WWE like a year, maybe a year and a quarter. Because I think after the Royal Rumble 92, I think they were pretty much gone. But yeah, whether he managed against Demolition or for Demolition, he was really, really good at getting heat. I mean, he had beaten his body up to that point. That's why he didn't move all that well. But then, of course, his most famous run would be managing Yokozuna. And he really did add a lot to the Yokozuna character, who wasn't a great promo. Because he didn't need to be. He needed to be a big guy. He didn't need to be as big as he was, like a Samoan Kondo. But he did get over for a good time. I really wish he would have lost some weight. Can you imagine if Yoko had been able to wrestle into 2000, been able to wrestle in WWE for about 10 years, if he had lost even gotten down to 500 pounds or even 450, I think it would have been really nice. Oh well, that another story for another day. Fuji really did lend a lot to whatever wrestler he managed. So yeah, okay, maybe the promos weren't there because his English was suspect because he didn't grow up with it. So his English wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. The accent did get in the way. But he made up for it by being the devious one, Mr. Fuji, by being the devious, cane swinging, odd job, that kind of stuff. Because that's exactly where the look got taken from, but it worked. It fucking worked. I'm not going to knock Fuji. And R.I.P. to Mr. Fuji, who seriously one of the unsung heroes in the ring, and certainly a very underrated manager. Promos aside, the guy could get over by just his evil laugh and just his antics at the ring. Outside the ring and stuff like that, and helping his guys get the victory. And even being willing to take some bumps in like the late 80s. And like that handicap match where Demolition beat him up. Mr. Fuji was damn good. Just a shame that I think he pretty much faded away after I think 96. But he also had a lot of injuries and everything, couldn't do the travel. Number 4, James Mitchell. He was James Vanderberg, I believe, in WCW. Managing Mortis and Wrath against Glacier and Ernest Miller. That was a great idea. Let's put Ernest Miller in the goddamn ring. I never cared for Ernest Miller. But so he was James Vanderberg there, and then he was in ECW as a Sinister Minister. He was great as a Sinister Minister. His main claim to fame, at least recently, granted it's been a number of years, was managing Abyss. He helped Abyss's character a ton. James Mitchell could get almost anything over. He managed to get more. He managed to get the whole idea of a feud with Ernest Miller and Glacier over. And this is nothing against Glacier. Glacier was a good enough worker. Ernest Miller was a shits. But he managed to get over this whole Mortal Kombat gimmick in WCW. He managed to get this whole Mortal Kombat feud over. So that's a big credit to him. James Mitchell, though, his time with Abyss is something I'm always going to remember fondly. Now, his ECW run as Sinister Minister was certainly good, and he was very well spoken. And is super intelligent. Like you hear interviews with him, Cornette, and I think it's on Cornette, the Arcadian Vanguard channel, YouTube channel, but it's him talking to James Mitchell or something like that. There's a clip of it out there. You can hear James Mitchell, who's very intelligent, and his intelligence permeated across the screen. He was able to get almost any feud that Abyss was in super over. And yeah, they had him manage Judas Messias against Abyss. That wasn't the best idea. Anybody who saw Wrestling Society X knows why maybe Judas Messias wasn't the best in American wrestling. At least I believe he was on there. Correct me if I'm wrong. There were a lot of people on there. There was a young Tyler Black on there. Seth Rollins, by the way, in case some of you new fans forget who was in Ring of Honor. To be fair, I can only remember some names. James Mitchell, great talent. Great talent. Really, there's no other way to say it. He helped keep that feud between Abyss and Sting interesting, if you will. Terrible pun. Sorry. But he was able to keep that interesting, if you will. So it was very good. Very, very good. Number 3, Slick. Jive Soul Bro. I don't know what it... Broly. Oh, God. Jive Soul Broly. Derb, if you ever watch this, make that happen. That would be so weird, Jive Soul Broly. Now I'm just picturing, Slick managing Broly in, a DBZ WWE crossover. Oh Christ, I've created a whole bunch of fanfic right here. Or a Team 4-Star thing. If you haven't checked out Team 4-Star, do that. But Slick, the Doctor style, he managed the Warlord, he managed Akeem, he tried to get the Akeem gimmick over, one-man gang being a white guy talked with a black accent. I can't imagine this would have been making fun of Dusty Rhodes at all. One-man gang was better as one-man gang, by the way. Slick managed some good talents. His time was brief. I think he was only in WWE 5-6 years, if I remember right. But he was entertaining. And he's even made sporadic appearances since. Main appearance for the AJ Lee Daniel Bryan wedding on the 1000th episode of Raw, which was entertaining. And he was the Reverend, because he's actually a legit Reverend, I believe. I liked Slick. I found Slick entertaining. Should he be up this high on the list? No, but he was fun. He was fun. He was outlandish. He was silly. But he was also pretty real. He seemed very invested in the character and made the character his own. So good job there. Now we go to Skandar Akbar. Devastation Incorporated, his time in WCCW especially. He was one of those that did not have to yell to get his point over. With Missing Link, with Abdul the Butcher, I believe. I think Abdul the Butcher is part of Devastation Incorporated. Correct me if I'm wrong. My WCCW history is limited, but I know that he brought in big monsters. Great Kabuki was, I believe, managed by Gary Hart, but you had a lot of cross promotion with some factions and stuff like that, and it would always go after the Von Erichs, and that's why Devastation Incorporated was created. And Skandar, like I said, he didn't have to yell to get his point across. He's very well spoken. He was very good. And I think, even, and I'm going to put the shirt up, Jim Cornette had spoken one time about how him and Skandar got locked in a cage for like a particular stipulation. And he said Skandar is a very pleasant cellmate. Very witty guy. He seemed very knowledgeable about wrestling. I'm not really familiar with much of his career pre-WCCW, and even then that stuff's limited. But the guy was very good. The guy was very good at being a very evil character. Also seemed like a super nice guy in interviews. I mean, a super nice guy. And helped train some wrestlers that are still going today. Check out that stuff or whatever. Google that stuff and you'll figure out, the people I'm talking about. It's a bit of a list, but it's pretty cool. And number 1, Classy Freddie Blassie. You pencil neck geeks. I'm not going to attempt to do his voice at all, but the guy was violent, brutal as a wrestler, great manager, helped influence the first ever title change at a WrestleMania when his Kane helped the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov, almost said Nikita Koloff, Nikolai Volkov, win the tag team titles from the U.S. Express. But that was near the end of his career. I don't think he managed much after that because of age and stuff like that and everything. And he did become more of the honorable legend and this kind of stuff. But boy, he was a damn good heel. It's hard to find a ton of his stuff from the 60s, unless WWE finds a lot of their stuff in their Hidden Gems collection. But his time managing people, I believe he managed the Iron Sheik or whatever. He would just rattle off so much of the stuff and get people so angry. But with his cane and with the fact that he was just a salty old fucker, he was still legit tough, even at that age. Now, obviously, age and health issues caught up with him, and he was confined to a wheelchair years later. But the 70s, even into the 80s, the guy was still a much hated heel, and he reveled in that, and he was so damn good at it. He really was so damn good. So, and a lot of these guys, unfortunately, rest in peace. But that's why I decided to do this list, is really to give some of these legends and some more of my favorite wrestling managers the mentions they deserve. So leave your favorites in the comment. Leave your favorite moments from these wrestling managers in the comments, whether in the ring, whether out of the ring. You let me know. Like, share, subscribe. Also, it's been Real Honesty with John Ritlin, and I will see you soon.